Is mise Ríonach Ní Néill, agus is mission cumadaí agus léireathóir Hopas Soineann Doineann, tógra alína de Galway fihe príomhchathair chultúr na hÉireann. Hopas Soineann Doineann aims to turn our bad weather to good use, to effect a cultural change in our relationship with bad weather, to use it as a source of creativity and community, and to make Galway's people and places more weather and climate resilient. The programme is multidisciplinary and it involves a wide range of projects running throughout the Capital of Culture year to the end of March 2021, engaging more than 20 artists and inventors from performance, music, architecture, dance, visual arts, sculpture, textile design, film, engineers and scientists, as well as community participants of all ages from across Galway city and county, working in the Irish and English languages. Agus tá sé mar aimig an tógra dearfach a chothú I measc phobal na Gaillimhe agus gníomhú san na hÉireáide. Tá muidir glórach Soineann sa Doineann. Weather is overlooked as a significant shaper of place, of landscape, of natural environment, of culture. Galway in the west of Ireland is one of the wettest and windiest places in Europe. It can rain on up to 227 days out of 365, and over 2 metres can fall in a year. Storms and gales come in frequently from the Atlantic, bringing near horizontal driving rain. And in midwinter they can be as little as 1 hour sunshine in a day. The only thing you can count on about the weather is that it will change soon and often. We can have 4 seasons in 4 minutes, let alone a day. The weather is so unpredictable and influential that talking about it is a very important part of Irish culture. People often greet each other by commenting about the weather, and no conversation is complete without it. Complaining about the rain, the wind, the cold is a common bond that brings strangers together, and as it changes so often, there's always something to talk about. The Irish language has more than 30 specific words for rain and countless expressions for wind. Weather dominates our decisions, or to be more correct, our indecision. Plans have to cover all eventualities from storm to sun, so it's often just easier not to plan and to grab opportunities when they arise. The weather affects our national character, our mood, our behaviour, our physical and our mental health. We are now experiencing a disconnect with our natural environment and the outdoors in Ireland, and that has implications for climate action. Because what you don't know, you don't value and you don't protect. You have to be out in the natural environment to know it, to appreciate and respect it, and to fight for it. But studies have shown that Irish people view being outdoors in winter and in rain as problematic, risky and dangerous. Bad weather is often cited as a significant barrier to outdoor activity, and even children are affected. The Heritage Council of Ireland study reported that children view the weather as the second worst thing about living in Ireland. So the result is people spend less time outdoors. We're called the indoor generation, depriving you of opportunities for connecting with nature, as well as physical activity. And it's called a nature deficit. And we have shrinking access to public and shared space. To explain why this is important for climate action to change this, I give an example from the Heritage Council again. To quote, children's attitudes about nature were highly related to regular exposure and involvement in nature, resulting in concern for the environment, connection to nature, and a stronger sense of place. These positive attitudes were linked to positive attitudes also in adulthood, which confirmed the fact that habits learned in childhood have long-term effect. Again, experience and knowledge of our natural environment are key to protecting it. You never hear an Irish person say, "Hope it rains," but we don't know that we are blessed. In the future, due to climate change, we may be praying and hoping for rain. We've already witnessed how climate change is affecting us in Ireland with an increase in violent storms, floods, droughts, coastal erosion and sea level rising. Public recognition of climate change and its causes is high in Ireland at around 70%, and the public will for action is strong. In the recent Climate Change Citizen Assembly, 97% of the people attending agreed that radical economic and social change was required to counter climate change. But the country is significantly behind in reaching its targets for mitigation. We need to engage people in planning for the future and adapting to change. We need to act fast. This is the context for Hope It Rains, Soineann, which offers the public positive ways to re-engage with the weather in Galway, challenges perceptions on our current weather and our future climate, and encourages active participants in addressing climate change in their communities. Tá mid géirí bheith ag baim súp as an aimsir agus ag gníomhú son na héráide. So one of the approaches is to look at weather as an energetic metaphor. Fundamentally, weather is the exchange of energy across space. That's it. It's the imbalance of heating from the sun onto a sphere sets up a global transfer of energy that is weather. Viewed as a metaphor, the potential for creativity is obvious. Changeability and unpredictability are exciting and dynamic, which is what Galway's weather is. Storms, cloudbursts, gales can be very beautiful and dramatic. Our weather is a diva, and as with any diva, you may be overwhelmed, but you will never be bored. Bad weather is an endless source of creative inspiration. Agus tá an túfas bríomhre a gcéine aige, ní animacail ach bríomhre an úsáidtemuid chun chuir síos a dhéanamh an naimsir. Curagás le báisteach bíonn se ag bagart, ag cafarnach, ag cur, ag bíthú, ag clagarnach, ag dorte, ag pille, ag díle, ag gleide, ag grada, ag rada, ag rille, ag sprecha, ag stelle báistí. There's a specific quality and action to each way that the rain can fall in Irish. So we approach weather as an artistic material. It's not just making art about the weather, but with and from the weather. Meteorological conditions are essential elements of an artwork or conditions for the artwork. And we see here a street mural by Shane O'Malley called Changes Change. This is an abstract mural whose shape, size, geometric patterns and colours change in reaction to rainfall. It uses hydrochromic paint so that the image transforms the direction, depending on the direction, intensity and amount of rainfall upon it. So rather than a static, fixed subject of a conventional mural or a conventional painting, this work is in constant transformation and dialogue with its surrounding environment. It reflects the capricious and mercurial nature of Galway's weather and counters perceptions of what you may assume the weather to be by portraying what it is at a specific moment. And as our climate changes rapidly, we need to be aware of this change. Another work in which the elements are a component material is a as yet untitled collaboration between myself and sound artist Ed Devan, which are a series of handheld musical instruments that are played by the wind and the rain. The weather creates so many sources for making sound and music if you could just catch them. Raindrops dripping from branches, wind whipping around corners, water gushing from a drainpipe spout, the sudden surges in coastal streams, sideways rainfall, hailstones, intermittent gusts. These weather instruments catch the weather and transform it to sound, and will be used outdoors in small groups, creating weather symphonies, a way of exploring the weather of your local environment through sound, building up an intimate weather and sound map of place, a sense of place, and placing the body within its meteorological environment. These above works also highlight an approach of the project, which is to challenge perceptions of the weather and climate with knowledge, to build awareness, understanding and appreciation, and to draw you into the here and now of being present, Shane's work, by being a visual representation of current meteorological conditions, makes you aware of how things are at the moment, not how you assume them to be. And it's not as bad as we think. It's mild in comparison with countries on the same latitude. And while it may frequently rain, it's dry more often than wet. Well, we're aiming to recalibrate our relationship with weather and climate and actively engage us. So another commission, which invites participants, particularly children with their families, to explore and learn about the weather, is Weatherplay Society. This commission, by Michelle Brown and Rona Byrne, builds on research into the play potential of bad weather, which was carried out with children across the county of Galway between 2016 and 2020. And they have created a toolkit for exploring, inventing and game playing with bad weather. It uses the weather as a creative material, including puddles, rainwater and wind. You explore and learn about your weather, as in, for example, creating a weather map. And there's guided game invention with the elements. Underpinning Hope It Rains, Soineann no Doineann, is a conviction that we need to recalibrate our place in nature. We need to know our place in a scheme of things. We need to relearn that the model of a hierarchy with the human at the apex is a dead end. It's this disrespecting of our natural environment has led us to this place where we are in now, where we're at risk of our own destruction by destroying our own surroundings. And our place is more that we are a part of nature, we are dependent on her, and we are in a symbiotic relationship with her. And this understanding is backed up by studies. A UK study of 20,000 people found that participants were substantially happier in natural or green outdoor places than in urban settings. So in Hope It Rains, Soineann no Doineann, many of the projects put themselves in a position of subservience and dependence on the weather, for the works to happen, for the works to be realised. We serve nature. In this piece called Grain Loves Rain, by the young Ukrainian duo Proso Atelier, they use the worst of Galway's weather as an integral component. Grain Loves Rain is a wearable piece of nature that you bring along on a rainy day. It is a fragile ecosystem on the go, which requires care and love. You need to feed it, and it eats water and moisture. To keep your cape of sprouted grains nourished, you need to be actively looking for the rain. As a concept, Grain Loves Rain questions a common position of humans as the centre of an ecosystem, because it requires a will to step back from your comfort zone and embrace the uncomfortable for the sake of the joint well-being and support of a wearable green ecosystem. Another example of a work contextualising our place within the environment is Portraits curated by Sean O'Flaherty. These bog portraits out in Rusmuck in the Connemara Gaeltacht mimic turlochs or bullain. These are seasonal lakes which come up as the water table floods in winter and are a common landscape feature of the west of Ireland. The bog portraits which are created out of cutting the bog in the same manner that bog is cut for turf and burning, represent two personalities of the Rusmuck public, Bridget Aylward, Queen of Alaska, and Colleen Hionharach, a famous sean-nós dancer. Placed in the bogs, the works reflect the changing role of bogs in the Gaeltacht communities. Until recently dug for fuel, they were busy locations of community life. Now marginal, they have a possible future valued as managed carbon sinks and nature reserves, and are in between both. These works, which are composed of rainfall and bog, are described by the artist Sean O'Flaherty as Nílanach Paul, agus an spéir, agus an solas. Go banúsach an technique nádúrach baintach leis a burtach a úsáid chun píosa ealaíona a chruthú. Sin é go banúsach Paul a chorta, agus ebrú ó thaobh an spéir, agus an isce, agus an fódmóna a bheithe casa le chéile, agus crotachar a rud éigin. So following that philosophy of recognizing ourselves as part of something much larger, of relinquishing control, of recognizing our dependence on nature, we have many weather-dependent events that need specific atmospheric conditions of either rainfall or wind speed to occur. Kite Fan is a design by myself and artist Jenny Roddy, which propels the wearer on skates using a back fan. The higher the wind speeds, the greater the risk, the more the thrill. And Umbrella Orphanage is a work conceived and developed by Jenny Roddy, which uses umbrellas, broken umbrellas, destroyed by Galway storms and collected by Galwegians, and then repurposed into flying polywotsets, which rely on good gusts of wind to come out. So we start to see our place within our weather environment. Pleura Bell, a new dance film by choreographer and Irish step dancer Kristen Fontanella, examines body and weather and starts from a question of what the relationship may be between traditional Irish dance and traditional Irish weather. She draws from her knowledge of traditional dance to make new rhythmical patterns and shapes inspired by the fall of rain on her body and the South Galway landscape. Listening to the raindrops, listening to what is happening around to hear what is happening within. One of the ways that artists can contribute to climate action debate is through futuring, imagining and modelling what could be. And one of these aspects of the near future is the landscape of renewable energy. And we explore in the project energy generating artworks and question the aesthetics of renewable energy generation and the potential of renewable energy as an artistic material. Questions that are well explored by Land Art Generator in the US. We are creating a new landscape without any comprehensive or nuanced discussion of its visual impact or its aesthetic potential, because the scale of renewable energy generation that is required has a huge visual impact on the landscape. The aesthetics of renewable energy generation is still a side issue But while we are looking at a new clean future, we should also ask, what will it be like to live in it? Paddy Bloomer, Belfast-based inventor and artist, uses solar and wind energy to power his kinetic sculptures for weatherbots. These two sculptures will be sited in the Jail River in Galway and create rain and measure time. We are also working on a collaboration with engineers in NUI Galway on microgenerators and design workshops, including with teenagers. To encourage action on climate change, artists ask, what if? That's what we're good at, is asking what if. What would we have to wear in this near future climate? What if we had to wear inflatable gear because it flooded so much? That it rained so much we had to wear rain helmets? Or go to school inside Zorb balls? Artists connect dots, model future utopias and dystopias. An example of this is Drowned Galway, which is an exhibition of large format photomontages on city walls and shop windows that visualise life in a near future Galway, where the abnormal has become normal and floods and sea level rising have transformed the city. Featuring familiar Galway views utterly changed by sea level rising and floods, they incorporate images of Galwegians in designs that imagine how we might cope with this enormous and imminent change. It forces the question, how close does the future have to come before we care enough to act? And by placing the works out on the streets, we are confronting Galwegians with what could be if we don't act. Another question is, how can we communicate, connect and collaborate when we can't or shouldn't travel? This is not just a question for the COVID crisis or for the climate crisis, but has been an urgent one for artists living and trapped in conflict zones. How does an artist in a conflict zone, of which there are increasing numbers, connect with and collaborate with fellow artists and get their voices heard? Or are international collaborations only for the privileged West? In a collaboration with Sohail Salem, a visual artist living in Gaza City, Palestine. This collaboration started before the COVID crisis, but we were all to get a small taste of what it was like for him to live confined. Due to the blockade, he is not allowed to travel out, and I am not allowed to travel to him. Access to electricity, water, even art supplies are limited and unreliable, and aerial bombings have been a reminder of the gulf between our two experiences, worrying whether your colleague and his family have been hit overnight. So we collaborate remotely, digitally. We've not yet met in person, but we can work together online. When exploring plastic waste, I was inspired by boats made by Gazan fishermen from waste plastic bottles, so that they could continue to earn a living when boat materials were being blockaded. Their ingenuity in turning the waste that was choking their surroundings into a solution to their lack of access to resources. And I asked Sohail if he could make a plastic bottle currach. This is the iconic West of Ireland rowing boat, and teach us here in Galway to make one. So using scavenged bottles and online instruction from him, this project will take place in January 2021 with scouts and community groups here, making a currach from plastic waste and launching it off the beach. This project addresses plastic waste and access to water and natural resources in extreme situations of conflict and deprivation. We don't have to look to the future, we can look at other places on the planet for what we may fear happen. The project alludes to the growing global concern around water management of excess and absence, to climate change predictions for Ireland that see us facing drought, considerable drought, in addition to increased precipitation, and to the UN estimates of people displaced by natural disasters, climate change refugees. Creating and recreating images of launching light fishing boats from a beach into the surf resonate with the cultural iconography of Gazan fishing heritage and West of Ireland fishing heritage, and alludes to our cultural commonalities, reminding us of what we have in common, and that as the threat of climate change knows no borders, so should the effort to mitigate it. So I'm going to just finish by referring to Galway environmentalist and activist Brendan Speedy Smith, who says that as of now we have to audit everything we do in relation to the impact on the planet. Everything, our art projects included. And one thing that we can learn from art practices is that frugality has to be cool. Gormagh.